So this year, your boy finally got to attend the BFI London Film Festival for real. I'd in previous years gone to a lot of screenings they do at cinemas around the UK, but this time I was at the real deal. I was chilling in the Royal Festival Hall, I was walking the red carpet, things got pretty crazy. And I want to talk about my time there and also some of the movies that I watched. So I say without further ado, let's just jump into it. The first film I saw wasn't strictly speaking a part of the festival itself, but it occurred on the first day and I want to talk about the experience nonetheless because I think it was freaking cool, alright? For the film's 10th anniversary, I got the chance to see Gravity in 3D at the BFI IMAX, aka the biggest screen in the UK. And that's not all, as this was then followed by an in-person Q&A with director Alfonso Cuarón, hosted by Gaspar Noé. Safe to say the whole thing was unreal. I'm not even the biggest fan of the film, but being able to catch this in IMAX 3D made my second time around much more enjoyable. I'd honestly say the script is pretty dog shit, but as I've stated before, Cuarón is such an incredible filmmaker. His direction can elevate almost anything, made all the more clear when your entire peripheral vision is literally just the movie. Experiencing it like this made certain moments feel so much more intense and awe-inspiring, and all the more admire how the film still looks pretty incredible and breathtaking to this day. The only moments I'd say are a little dated visually are the fire and water effects, but overall, solid movie I'd say. Even if Sandra Bullock and George Clooney in it are kind of annoying. Ow! The Q&A afterwards was honestly not all that, most of the time taken up by Gaspar Noé being a goof. But he is such a character, and being only like 6 rows away from Alfonso, it really didn't matter much to me. And still, I did gain a bit of an insight in how to successfully utilize 3D technology, specific influences for the film, as well as other favourites of Cuarón. But the highlight of the evening, hands down, was the dude given the responsibility of asking the very last question and going on a 5-minute tirade about basically his whole life story and bombarding Alfonso on specific scenes in like each one of his films, prompting the entire audience to begin collectively uproaring with laughter, Gaspar Noé staring directly out at us with an absent-minded expression before chuckling also, and then Cuarón himself attempting to remain composed and respectful before losing it as well to then just reply, I don't remember. So an unforgettable experience, if not all for the right reasons. Moving on to films actually screening at the festival. First up was The Bikeriders, written and directed by Jeff Nichols. Now, prior to this, I had only ever seen one film by Nichols, that being Take Shelter, which I greatly enjoyed, and found to be a much better film than this. The Bikeriders follows a Midwestern motorcycle club throughout the 60s as their group gradually evolves into something a little more sinister and is inspired by a true story. And to be honest, I really don't think that this story was all that interesting to tell, at least for me anyways. The whole film feels pretty standard and one I think I've seen many times before. It's got a classic feel to it, especially visually, which I quite enjoyed, and a cool vibe overall, but really nothing to elevate it from, it's alright. Its performances were probably my favourite element of the film. Tom Hardy doing another weird voice was pretty good, Michael Shannon always a scene stealer, and Jodie Comer awesome as per. Austin Butler was good as well, but his whole presence just makes me kinda cringe. Him trying to be a tough guy while still looking like a supermodel and talking about his club, I struggle to always take completely seriously. I also found the music supervision to be quite irritating. One of my biggest pet peeves in media is constantly playing just snippets of classic licensed music minutes apart from each other with no seeming real purpose aside from lazily transitioning one scene to the next or to compensate for what is actually being shown, and the first chunk of this movie is a big culprit of that. But as the film shifts into its second half, as the tone matures, becoming much more retrospective and slower paced, this becomes less of an issue and I did begin to enjoy myself more, even if some scenes do go on for far too long and it seems like it has no idea how to end. But it's just not all that memorable. I wasn't emotionally invested basically at all. Still, it's decent, it's accessible, everyone's dad is gonna love it, and everyone I saw it with really liked it, so I'm probably just being a hater. Sorry. Now, I had originally only 2 films scheduled for today, Bikeriders and the next film I'm gonna talk about. But me and my friends had such a fun time at the previous screening, we decided to try our luck waiting in the standby queue for whatever happened to be showing next, which just so happened to be the new David Fincher film, The Killer. One of my most anticipated of the year and one I could in no way get a ticket for. Now the screening was at 2:30, and after some time running around trying to actually figure out where you're meant to queue up, we started standing in line just 10 minutes before it was scheduled to begin. We had only but a dream, and 10 people standing in our way. Time was ticking. We managed to get to the ticket desk at 2:33. Surely the dream was dead right, the film's already started, but the power of the Finch was within us. And the box office may or may not have just quickly given us some tickets for free, who's to say? So yes, it was our lucky day and we raced in there as fast as we could. Unfortunately missing maybe about the first 5 minutes, but still on a high like you couldn't believe. We were in there. Now, full of adrenaline and hella sweaty was probably not the prime conditions to start watching The Killer, a very patient and ice-cold thriller, but I greatly enjoyed it nonetheless. The Killer is based on the French graphic novel series of the same name, and stars Michael Fassbender as a dude who kills people. Who'd have thought it? And I loved both his character and central performance here. As a dude who listens to the Smiths so much, it's kind of embarrassing. As the film's generic title suggests, this can in part feel a little pedestrian and obvious for Fincher, that did leave me wanting maybe a little more to chew on, but that in no way means he doesn't handle this with his signature meticulous style and expertise, even if it probably only ends up somewhere in the middle of his filmography. But look at what he has to compete with. Look! There are so many memorable and incredible moments in here that just boast how much of a master he truly is. An action scene near the latter half of the film springs to mind, as well as just the whole first portion of the movie, for which I was in awe. Everything just so efficiently shown, moving from one thing to another so smoothly. This is in part due to the editing here, which is, my god, so slick and masterful. I wasn't always entirely into the film, especially somewhat in the middle portion, but once you kind of understand what it's going for, it picked up for me once again. An odd point, but I feel like knowing about Fincher's background in CGI and how he can expertly disguise using it in like each one of his movies now make me somewhat conscious to look out for it for some reason, like I'm gonna catch him out. So often the planes here in the background kinda stood out to me. Shots behind windows or Fassbender's face or his motorcycle helmet also looked a bit iffy, but literally everything else looks incredible. This was my first Fincher film actually in a cinema, and boy was it a treat, as the sound design to match was also impeccable. But perhaps my favourite aspect of the film would have to be the comedy. This film is surprisingly really darkly comedic, and is one of the main reasons I'm going to revisit this again as soon as it comes out, and hopefully completely fall in love with all of it now I understand the vibe. But for now, I still think this is a real good watch, and probably my favourite new thing I saw at the whole festival. God bless the Finch. Mark! Mark! And for my third film of that day, I attended the UK premiere of the new Todd Haynes movie May December. May December was one of the films I was most disappointed I missed at Cannes, but everything happens for a reason, because catching it here meant your boy could once again walk the red carpet and also have the film introduced by Haynes himself, which was pretty cool. Todd Haynes is a very interesting filmmaker, with great movies under his belt such as Carol and Safe. Also Velvet Goldmine, a film where I don't really care about anything that's going on, but I really dig the vibes. Anyways, the premise for this film was what intrigued me most about it, that being examining a tabloid news story 20 years after the fact, through the lens of an actress meeting with the central figure in question in order to research them for a film adaptation of the tale. And luckily, I don't feel like this premise was wasted or underutilized. May December is a great character study on its three main players, Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore both being great, but shout out to my boy Charles Melton, who I only ever knew from when I used to watch, Riverdale, and is genuinely amazing here, as an adult who never really had a chance to grow up, and it seems only now is just beginning to process a pivotal life event. For Sammy Birch's first feature screenplay, this is extraordinarily impressive, and although I didn't find its dark comedic aspects to always work for me, the script is probably my favourite part. I can't really delve too much into this one without giving things and ideas away I think a better experience firsthand for the film itself, but just know that it's the film that's left me thinking most about it after everything I saw at the festival. For its mix of tones and the questions it raises, it's camp, it's uncomfortable, it's weird, all the best things. And although I'm not as passionate about it as many others are, I still really dug this, and would recommend you to check it out, as I think I'll be doing the same again too. Side note, the Photoshop photographs in this movie look particularly goofy. I know this is for some reason a common problem in movies, but I guess it stood out here enough for me to note it down. The Boy and The Heron, another ticket practically impossible to get a hold of for Hayao Miyazaki's supposedly last film, but now, not really I guess. Now I will admit I am embarrassingly not all that well versed in the work of Miyazaki. I've obviously seen Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro, but desperately need to catch up on his other masterworks and more Studio Ghibli for that matter. But I'm also obviously aware of his legendary status and contribution to not just animation, but filmmaking in general. So colour me stoked I would be able to catch this at its UK premiere. However, unfortunately, I did find myself a little disappointed. The film's opening scene had me incredibly enthralled with how beautifully it was told and wondering where the story was gonna go. But that then ended up being my favourite scene in the entire movie. For the way this story is told from there on, I didn't find to be all that engaging or satisfying. The film feels almost improvised, like someone making up a story as they go, which for some is part of the reason they love the film, almost like being read a bedtime story. But to me, came across kind of muddled and all over the place. A lot of vignettes with various fun side characters strung together by just a loose thread. For the first chunk of the movie, we get only glimpses into the fantastical elements we come to expect, and I wasn't all that into it. But once we finally dived into that world, I did begin to enjoy myself much more. To state the obvious, the animation is absolutely insane and impressive, breathtaking and beautiful. I specifically loved how fire was presented and basically all of the character design, especially my main man, the Heron, whose character was one of my favorite parts, and everything about it is just so clearly beautiful. I just didn't really connect with any of it. Parts left me unsure what Miyazaki was trying to say, and I'm not all that invested to want to go back and find out or spend my time interpreting every little detail. So unfortunately, I just think this one wasn't for me. But there is enough in there for me to give it another chance later down the road. And I definitely gotta check out more Miyazaki, bro. Next up is Richard Linklater's Hitman. So another quick story about getting this ticket. I just waited over an hour in the standby queue for them to then cut the line off as soon as I got to the front. But waiting there for like 5 more minutes just in case for when the film officially started, and your boy got practically the last ticket available. Boom. But anyway, what was the film like? Well, your boy liked it quite a bit. I was unsure how I felt near the beginning, the first 10 minutes or so looking and feeling like a mediocre sitcom to me, but as it went along and the main crux of the story revealed itself, I did begin to settle in more to the film's fun, breezy tone. The film follows Glenn Powell as Gary Johnson, an undercover police officer posing as a hitman in order to arrest those trying to hire him, when all his principles go out the window as he seemingly meets the woman of his dreams, played by Arria Ahona. Now an important thing to note is our two main players here, Powell and Ahona, are both, how do you say, hot? And therefore this can be quite a sexy movie, and I enjoyed that aspect quite a bit. But there was other things I liked about it as well. Taking Glenn Powell's looks out of the equation, he delivers one of my favourite performances of the year. His facial expressions, his different personas, everything just pitch perfect and a joy to watch. Though it did make me cringe a little when the movie is fully aware of his attractiveness, and then you realise he co-wrote the screenplay. The movie is quite funny, very crowd-pleasy. There's a certain scene near the end of the film that was met with a round of applause just because it was so well executed and satisfying to watch. But I'm also not totally head over heels with the whole thing. As I kind of mentioned before, it's really not that visually interesting, which was disappointing. The music was decent, but forgettable, and I was really into the ideas and themes this film looks at, but often felt it didn't really explore them rather than just directly spell them out. Like, this is what the film is about, alright? We often see this in classroom or university lecture scenes where what the teacher is explaining is basically the crux of the film, and we literally see that here as in his day-to-day life, Powell's character is also a high school teacher. When it transitions more into the love story, while charming, it can become a little tiring and familiar, but still, it's an easy watch and overall just a fun time with the movies. Nothing totally radical like some of Linklater's other work, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. I also then managed to catch Cobweb for my second time around, which I'll briefly talk about here. But if you want to hear my more detailed thoughts, you can check out my cam video where I also talk about how attending its premiere there was like the greatest experience of my life. What struck me most second time around was just how smoothly this thing flows. Like, even though I still think it could be trimmed down by like 15 to 20 minutes, I'm never bored throughout the entire runtime, with slick editing much like in The Killer. For a comedy, the film looks gorgeous and therefore made the visual boredom of Hitman stand out even more. It isn't perfect, I am more into the sequences of them actually making the movie than the movie they're making itself, but still I think this is a great time and incredibly funny with a climactic sequence that's brought the house down both times I've seen it. So do yourself a favour and check this one out. And the final film I saw at the festival was none other than Chicken Run 2. Now, why did I attend the worldwide premiere of Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget? Mainly because I wanted to be able to say that I attended the worldwide premiere of Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget, but also because the first film fucking slaps. Once again, I didn't have a ticket for this one, so I got there nearly 2 hours before the film started as I suspected the line would be bigger than you'd think. You don't know what Aardman fans are like, but there was literally just 2 people in front of me. Therefore, I was guaranteed to get in and have the greatest experience of my life. I got to walk the red carpet, grass carpet, because, you know, chickens. I got to meet Ginger the chicken in the flesh, which was a pretty big deal for me. And I also got a free poster out of it, so let's go. To be honest, I initially wasn't too hyped about the film due to a lot of Aardman's recent outputs not piquing my interest all that much, but just the atmosphere around the place when I got there. All the talented animators and crew in the audience, everyone genuinely excited to see what Chicken Run 2 had in store for us, increased my expectations substantially. So therefore, when I actually watched Chicken Run 2 and my original apprehensions were met, I was all the more disappointed. Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget is a fine movie, but it just hurts all the more when the original is so great. The sequence of events in the first is far more engaging and entertaining, and maybe it's because I'm older, but this feels far more kid-oriented. There's a couple great jokes in here and a few chuckles, but it's nowhere near as funny as the original. And I'm gonna keep on comparing this to the original, because like, if you don't want to be compared to Chicken Run, don't make a sequel to Chicken Run. But regardless, on its own, aside from the animation, there really isn't anything that of note. But let's talk about that animation, which is incredible. Stop motion is already one of my favourite things in the world, and Aardman Animations are masters at it. I mean, The Wrong Trousers is genuinely one of the best things ever made, and the scale of this movie in particular is truly a sight to behold. Just the sheer amount of pre-planning and time it must have taken to execute some of these scenes is unbelievable to me, and so incredibly impressive and honourable. There's a specific sequence near the end with probably over 100 character models, all moving and talking at the same time, that just blew me away. But this larger scale, while extraordinary from a technical aspect, is part of the reason I feel this lacks a lot of the charm that original film had. There was a kind of quaintness to the first that therefore made its greater moments much more impactful and also humorous. However, I think the thing that disappointed me the most about the film was the music. Hearing them play that original score around the premiere before the film started got me so pumped. That original theme is genuinely incredible, and personally there is nothing that even comes close to that here. Looking up the composer after the fact, I was actually surprised to see Harry Gregson Williams had returned, as I felt something was missing. But then later realised this was due to John Powell not contributing to this film, much like with the first, and that he must have been the secret ingredient. But the music is by no means terrible, except for this Paloma Faith original track that is for some reason in here, like, what are you doing? I was wondering why she was at the premiere. Now shockingly, Chicken Run 2 came under some controversy when it was first announced. This due to many of the original voice actors not being asked to return. Some for understandable reasons, others not so much. And I have to say, the voice acting here is noticeably lacking. Zachary Levi seems strangely held back, and Julius Wahala's original performance as Ginger is genuinely one of my favourite aspects of the first, and Tandiwe Newton is just a fine replacement, nothing really stand out. So the problem isn't that they sound completely different, I thought their interpretations of the voices were pretty decent actually, and not all that distracting to me, but that they were just kind of adequate, which is not what you want out of a vocal performance. But Bab's still a queen. I usually don't watch film trailers because I like to experience a film just how it is, but sometimes I let it slide for teaser trailers just to get a little taste of something I'm excited for. But I might stop that altogether now, as there is a reveal at the end of the Chicken Run 2 trailer that I wish was not included at all, as it would have made for a great reaction in the cinema, and occurs later than you would expect for something previously revealed like that. So while I didn't personally love it, and found pretty much every element aside from the animation to be rather middling, I'm sure families will dig it, much like all those around me at the premiere. And I'd also say to still give it a chance, as Aardman hold a special place in my heart. And anyways, who else can say they attended the worldwide premiere of Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget? Alone. On the final day of the festival, we attempted to queue up for the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Poor Things. I was really excited to check this one out, but it seemed like the dream was dead even queuing up an hour and a half before. But something made me want to stay there to at least try. And you know what? Thank God I did. I mean, I didn't get into the movie, but I experienced something much more special. Who just so happened to walk into the South Bank right as we were standing there waiting in line? None other than the king, Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is one of those filmmakers who made me want to make movies. So if they suck, blame him. And I genuinely started to freak out when I noticed him enter. He mingled around for like 5 minutes before leaving, and as he left I thought, fuck it, let's go. And I managed to tell him what I've been wanting to say since, I don't know, I was like 14 years old. I said, I didn't say that. I said thank you for inspiring the younger generation of filmmakers, and that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is the greatest film ever made. Boom. A really poignant moment for me, which my mate then kind of ruined by trying to interview him, making everything awkward and him basically running away. But hopefully he doesn't hate me and just hates my friend, because I'm a big fan, alright, I'm sorry. And that concludes my time at the London Film Festival 2023. It was such a memorable experience, and now attending 2 film festivals, I've come to understand they just reinforce how much movies rock. Am I right, folks? The atmosphere around them is unparalleled, and they are just a joy to be a part of. So even though you may spend most of your time queuing up for things you will never get to see, I hope I can meet you one day, Greta. I wouldn't change a thing. And I guess there's only one thing left to say. Skadoosh.